one of the first things in overcoming mental ill health, or the mismanagement of mind behind the lifestyle issues, which was that first lifestyle factor, is identity. So if mind is thinking, feeling, choosing, and mind is this thinking, feeling, choosing thing that is influencing identity, acute and chronic stresses, unconscious drivers, diet, exercise, and sleep, then we have to address each of those. And that's what we will be doing in this conference, is addressing each of those in as much depth as we can in the time that we have. But I'm going to start now by how we can start solving this problem. So we now know there's a problem. We now know that we can change, that our mind is 99% of who we are, and that when we use our mind correctly, we can change our brain and our body. Okay? We now know that we can't ignore the mind, it's 99%. We now know that the biomedical model of saying if you're feeling sad, you're ill, is not good. We need to look differently. But so the first step in mind management then becomes you need to understand your identity. And I mentioned earlier on that a crisis in identity is one of the major contributors to the suicide epidemic that we are seeing. There's many other reasons as well. So I don't want to go into that. I want to talk to you about and help you with your identity, because the research is also showing that it is a significant problem globally with the advances and changes in technology. So it's so crazy. As we've advanced in so many ways, we've gone backward in so many ways. We've gone backward in our health, as I've been saying. We've also gone backward in our identity. And we can see this out there in the world because the self-help industry is a $45 billion industry, and increasing all the time. So it shows that people are desperate to understand their identity. So what is identity? Very simple. Identity is, remember what mind is. Mind is how you think and feel and choose. You're always thinking, you're a thinking being. When you think, you feel. When you think and feel, you choose. You're doing this all the time. Those three things go together. Identity is how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. So mind is how you think, feel, and choose. Identity is how you uniquely think and feel and choose. So you're all hearing the same words. You're all hearing the same information. Okay, matching the slides. But each and every one of you is hearing it differently. So the orange firing in your brain now, if you were linked up to that technology, would look different. And the little trees that you're growing to hold the information I'm giving you would look different, because each of you has your own perception. You're actually all hearing me differently. There's 1,400 of you here. You're all hearing 1,400 different things. And even though it's the same words that I'm speaking, you are hearing it differently. We see from the neuroscientific research that your brain is literally structured to suit how you function. So your special way of thinking, feeling, and choosing matches your physical brain. And your brain is designed to work and enhance. So it's this relationship that's going on. So why do we need to address identity first in the lifestyle factors? Well, I think the most logical answer is that your identity is defining how you think and feel and choose. So if, and let's go back to the logic of the first session, if people are dying younger from lifestyle issues, and the thing that manages lifestyle issues is mind, we have to go back to how we are using our mind. What is mind? How we think, feel, and choose. So therefore, the very first thing is to understand, how do I think, feel, and choose? Get it? So that's the first step in any healing and mental health. Now let me tell you, when I ran my practice, the very first thing I would do with every single patient that walked in the door was I would help them with their identity. I worked with the worst of the worst cases, I've already mentioned, even in my practice. I chose to work with those patients that everyone else didn't want to work with. The delinquents that were too difficult, the adults that were just like beyond it, the young kids that were such behavioral issues. And the reason I did that was because I believed so much in the power of mind management. But I can guarantee every patient that walked through my door, I used to have boxes and boxes of tissues. Because every patient that walked through my door had such a crisis of identity that there's no ways that I could give any help until I had addressed that issue first. And so I was trained in an era where IQ was dominant still, and IQ so unscientific, and the category the personality profile movement was becoming really hot. And I hated both those movements. And they both, because basically you're not a number, IQ movement. You're not static or fixed in time, which is what the IQ movement says you are, that this is your intelligence and this is your potential. It's not static. That's not even science. It's not brain science. It's not human science. It's not human behavior. It's so wrong, but it's a philosophy that dominated for so long, that this is who you are, fixed in time. This is your little number. That kind of still is around, not as dominant, but it's still there. We have such a hunger to put numbers to everything. Then the personality profile movement came next. And the personality profile movement looked at you more as a category. So instead of just as a number, you were described a bit more. So it's a definite improvement. But now, 30 years later, we're seeing, and I must tell you that I've been fighting this for 30 years too, but 30 years later, the replication of the studies of personality profiles and so on is showing that this is a very, very inaccurate way of looking at humans. Because I can stick this group over there and that group over there. I could divide you all up if we did various different personality tests into different groups. Because you'd fill it in and you'd get a similar score and you'd be in a group and you'd be a type A or a type whatever kind of, there's so many around, different profiles. But I can tell you now, as soon as we sat down with each other and started talking, what would we see? Total differences. So we cannot categorize or put people into numbers. I can't give you a number. I can't put you in a category. But what I can do is see you as an individual case study. You are your own individual case study. You've got to learn to understand how you as a case study change over time. But it starts with you first getting some level of insight into how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. So I had all these great diagnostic tools that I was trained to use, and I mean they were great because you could answer these questions and get answers and get numbers and measure, and I could tell a person this is what you like, and then I could put them through a little sequence therapy session, and I could do another little test and give them another number, and I'd improve their language and their cognition, but that didn't carry over into life. So for many years, therapists have faced a huge problem, and it's called carryover, sustainability. Okay, so you're fine in the therapy session, but now you've got to go out in the world. The meditation example I gave earlier on, I'm fine in this moment, but I've got to face the rest of the day. We have to manage our mind all day long. We have to have carryover. And I'm not saying I'm anti any form of intervention. I think it's very good. And because the most important thing of intervention is the relationship. And that's actual science as well, where it shows that the most powerful reason why people heal in any kind of therapy session is not because of any technique that the therapist is using or counselor. It's because of the relationship that builds. That's the primary reason. And then the tips and the techniques and tools are very powerful, but it's the relationship that will be the driver. So what we have to come back to is recognizing that you as a unique individual need to start understanding and getting a deeper insight into how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. So what I did was I decided not to use any of those fancy diagnostic tools. I would use them, but in a different way. And I started researching to try and find out how could I help someone understand how they think, feel, and choose. I have 4 children and a husband. They became my guinea pigs very early on, my live lab rats. And from very early on, I was doing work with them, and I have a big family, a big Italian family, so they all became big fat Greek wedding type family kind of situation, and everyone was experimented on and whatever. But bottom line is that I developed a profile that is not in the number movement, the category movement, but it's in the movement of seeing you as an individual. I call that movement the geodesic movement, which basically is a fancy word for saying looking at holistically at a person, looking at the whole person, the context, the story, and the person's organic growth, because you're not the same now as you were even an hour ago. You're always changing. Every memory that you recall is different to when you first experienced that thing. So memory is also changing. So you're always changing. So you are you, but you keep changing. So you need to kind of have a baseline of who are you, and then you need to understand and kind of track how you're changing. So I decided to develop a profile that was 1,000 questions and took 7.5 hours to administer. And that was fine because I was in a therapy situation. I decided this is too difficult, and I simplified. And the simplified versions are in my book, Think, Learn, Succeed. And the other one is in The Perfect You. And there's also an online program with The Perfect You that has the profile. And we will be putting a simple version of it into the app as well. So the app, when you become part of our app community, all these different things over time will be added as well. So you'll be able to access it through the book and through mobile technology. Okay, so I wanted my patients to come in, and I wanted them to help them understand how they think, feel, and choose. So I remember one young guy one day came, one of my favorite kind of cases was a really serious delinquent. This child was just about to go to juvie school, and he was like impossible. And his parents, I don't know how they even got him to me, because we couldn't even get him out the car. And I had my practice had an area where you could just sit like safely. There were no cars going past because it was sort of inside. And all we could do was get him sitting on that little sidewalk area. So I went and sat next to him on the floor, and I said, okay, you don't have to do anything except nod or shake your head. I'm just going to ask you some questions. And at first, I mean, really, if daggers could kill, I would have been dead. And this is really someone who is also totally over-therapeuticized, over-treated, so representative of the case studies that I had been working with in my practice, and so representative of most people in the world. Someone's going to shape you if you don't shape yourself. This child had been so shaped by everyone else's opinions. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. So eventually he just, I can't do anything. So I may as well just be difficult and get this and get addicted and whatever, all kinds of things. Anyway, long story short, he started nodding, and I started asking the questions. I did a shortened version that took me a few minutes. I went inside my office, printed out a little graph, came back and sat next to him, and I said, I think this is how you think and feel and choose. And I proceeded to kind of explain to him. I got his attention, and this would happen every single time. He said, can we do more? And he came inside, and we proceeded to start intervention where I did the longer version, and then we started working on the various different aspects of what I helped him with. Anyway, a few months later, I was in a place in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where we used to live, and I had my 4 kids who were quite young at that stage, and I took them to a movie, and I see this giant, because he was very big, I saw this giant young man running up to me, and he picked me up and swung me around in front of his friends, and he said, this is my therapist. And I thought, how cool is this 18-year-old? And here he's at the movies with his friends. I mean, he wouldn't even go anyway. Now he's at the movies with his friends, and he's even like, he's acknowledging another adult. And so it was just a breakthrough moment. And I can tell you 1,000 more stories like that. And it's those stories that keep me going. All of us that are helping people, which is all of us. You sit down with a friend. You don't have to be a therapist. You sit down with a friend and you listen. You sit down with your child or your husband and you listen, and you can see them changing just by you listening, just by you noticing. That is the most unbelievable feeling. It's the most unbelievable thing that's happening in your brain and your body in response, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's that community thing. So my key to getting through to people was always to use these profiles, because there's no wrong answer. I'm not measuring you. We're so measured. Everything's a number. This whole move 60 years ago, which is also linked into what we call evidence-based medicine, where unless we can give you a statistical number, it doesn't count. It's got to, and I'm not saying statistics aren't wrong, I use them in my research, but we can't take every single person's narrative and make it a number, and then stick you in a box and say, okay, this is your kind of treatment you need. What may work for 2 people will not work for 2 other people. Case in point, I have a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who went through the most horrific childhood. Her mother was a coke addict. She was born to her when she was 15. She wasn't cared for. She was repeatedly raped and abused by her uncles, and she can't even remember who else. Eventually, her mom committed suicide after years of being depressed and in and out of hospitals and multiple marriages and just terrible. And eventually, her dad, the first dad, he had multiple marriages too, just a mess. Anyway, this woman is one of the most together, sweet, wonderful, incredible women. She pulled herself together. She really, but she said for years it was really hard. For years, and she said to me, the key thing for her was facing it. So when I was talking about, because we met through, we basically, she's our agent, we're buying a house in Seattle, there, I gave it away. So we became very good friends, and she had been following me on social media and so on, and so we started talking about this thing that she went through. And she was asking me the one day, she said, you keep talking about forgiveness and what forgiveness does, and that kind of stuff. So I told her what it does in the brain, and in the car, we're driving around, and she suddenly broke down. She said, now I know why I have this other issue in my life. She's been battling a little bit with her weight and so on. And she said, because I still haven't forgiven my uncle for abusing me. And so she suddenly saw the energy and how that had been translated into whatever. So long story short, I didn't have to give her a therapy session. I was a friend, and we were talking, and I listened. And this is what, from there we went into a whole thing about, she said, I had to refine myself. I said, well, try the profile, try using the gift profile, try using the UQ, start understanding yourself. So that's just some stories to show you that when we start understanding how we function, it doesn't make us selfish. It makes us want to reach out and help others. The most natural thing of identity is to reach out and help others. So when someone is jealous of someone else, or someone wants what someone else has got, or someone's envious of someone else's job or life or platform, whatever, that is a very good warning signal to pay attention to. So if you are feeling envious or jealous, and we've all done it, let's admit it. If you haven't, stop lying, okay? So we've all done it. We're all going to still do it. And as soon as we do it, instead of freaking out and thinking, oh no, I'm so bad, I'm so guilty, because the guilt will actually cause more damage, embrace it. Celebrate, oh, I'm jealous of someone. Now, you're not celebrating that I am jealous, you're celebrating the fact that you've recognized it. And then you can embrace it. And then you can see that this is something that I'm not doing wrong. Now, that in order to do that, I need to understand how I think and feel and choose. I need to understand my identity. It'll give me the confidence to understand who I am and to recognize when I'm actually not operating in the way that I should be. And that is really, if you have to look at why do we need this, your identity defines how you think, feel, and choose. Your identity is the foundation of resilience. When you operate in your natural mode, for want of a better word, and there's a lot of brain science behind this, I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute, but essentially when you're operating in how you comfortably think, feel, and choose, your body is going to respond, your brain is going to respond. You're going to find yourself more able to self-regulate. Because if you remember, mind is how you think, feel, and choose. Identity is how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. And mind management is using your thinking, feeling, and choosing to manage all that stuff, the acute stresses and all that stuff. So if I understand myself better, I'm going to see when I'm envious. I'm going to see when I haven't forgiven. I'm going to see when I'm getting irritable. I'm going to see when I'm actually just going chaotically through the daily stressors. I'm going to see that, hey, there's some stuff I've got to deal with. I'm going to start facing the fact that, hey, the way I'm eating is not right. Or I should maybe exercise more. Or I can't just keep whining or whatever. You're going to see it because you train yourself to be more self-regulated when you get to know yourself. And so I strived for many years to try and refine this profile that I did with my patients and make it simple and easy to, I've said all these three things, I'm going to go to the next slide, in terms to help people to get into this, how do I uniquely think, feel, and choose? I'm going to tell you about the two profiles in a moment. Just very quickly, why is there an identity crisis? Many reasons. I've got 3 categories of reasons. Obviously, they're not all the reasons, but essentially, social media, we all know that one. And social media has had such a bad rap. There's also a lot of good about social media. And I'll tell you that there's more good than bad about social media. But if you don't manage it, you're going to lose your identity for exactly those reasons. It creates envy and conflict because you make a lousy someone else. That's really what you need to tell yourself. Understanding how you think, feel, and choose makes you a great you. It makes you recognize that you'll make a lousy someone else. It makes you recognize that no one is a threat. Everyone is someone to be excited about, because if they are not like me, there's nothing to be jealous of. There's nothing to be envious of. And the more you celebrate someone else, the more you improve your brain health and your physical health. In fact, all those lifestyle factors will go up a notch. You will find yourself able to control a lot more stuff. We spend way too much of our day envying people. One of the major gripes I have about social media, and Dr. Mark, who's part of my team, and I are going to talk about this a bit more tomorrow, but one of the major issues with social media is people are spending so long comparing. So it's what are you doing with your mind when you look at the social media? It's not the social media that's the big bad evil. It's what are you doing with your mind as you look at the social media. So if you're looking at scrolling through and seeing the great life that everyone's having, and you're going, hey, yay, this is great, and you mean it. You're not faking it. You mean it. You are actually enhancing your own brain health. You're celebrating someone else, and that is so healthy. It builds resilience in you. It changes, literally, you grow telomeres. You grow telomeres. Those socks on the end of chromosomes, and you want to grow telomeres. That's just one of many incredible effects. You'll drop your cortisol levels, very good, because cortisol levels, if they're too high, are not very good for you. You'll even drop your homocysteine levels, which is a very strong indicator of inflammation in your body. You see, those lifestyle factors, those 95% lifestyle factors that are responsible for these early deaths that we're seeing are causing low-grade inflammation across your entire brain and body. And there's a ton of research out there talking about inflammation and its link to disease. So you, with your mind, your thinking, feeling, choosing, if you don't operate in the correct version of it, if you're not thinking, feeling, and choosing properly, which is going to be you're going to get out of mind management, you're going to not manage those lifestyle factors correctly. You're going to get into chronic stress by constantly scrolling through Instagram and looking at someone else's better life than yours. And that is causing low-grade inflammation across your entire brain and your entire body, which is messing up your endocrine system, which is messing up your everything. One thing after another. It's a whole snowball effect. And then we think, social media is so bad, get off your phone, put your phone down. Yes, control the time, all these things, whatever you look at the most, but we need to look at our mind behind what we're doing. Always our mind. We have become such an age of blaming things for our stuff. Poor old phone, it's a great device. I want to see anyone live without it now. It's not the phone that's the issue, ladies and gentlemen. It's how you're managing your mind with the phone. That's the issue. Next thing, intrinsic versus extrinsic. We operate in a self-help world where we go to courses. You can do courses at Yale and Harvard on happiness. We have a happiness industry that has grown, where people think that happiness is something that I can actually get externally and put it on the inside. And this happiness industry is literally an industry. Happiness, psychology, etc. Now, I'm not against happy. But do you know that happy is not just a big smiley face whenever, all the time? Happiness is, do you have peace in the midst of your tears? That is really happiness. That is really linked to success. Happiness is not something that you get extrinsically. And if you're trying to find it extrinsically, you're going to lose your identity. When you are operating in how you uniquely think, feel, and choose, there's a sense of peace and happiness that's inside of you, that even through the tears and the depression and the anxiety and the panic attacks and all those things, there's a sense of, okay, I can manage this. I can embrace it, I can get it out there, and I can process, and I can do something. I can connect with my community, I can do whatever. There's a sense of, I have something in place. Earlier on this evening, I said to you, do you have a mind management technique for the chronic stressors of your life? Do you have a mind management technique for the acute stresses of your life, etc.? And you're only really going to be effective at mind management when you understand how you think, feel, and choose. So, to that end, let me go to the next slide. As I said, I developed this profile that was 1,000 questions and took 7 hours, not very practical, great in a therapy practice, but not in life. So I simplified it down to 2 profiles, put them in 2 different books. They've had extensive use over the years. We've got probably close to 1 million people plus using these profiles. And these profiles are so simple. There's no wrong answer. They're not a test. What you're doing is you're learning how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. The gift profile you'll find in my book, Think, Learn, Succeed, and the UQ, the unique qualitative, I love that fact that you're unique and you're qualitative. The unique qualitative assessment profile is in the Perfect You book. The gift profile is something you can do in 20 minutes or so. It basically helps you to understand your customized way that you are thinking, feeling, and choosing. So it gives you nice insight and a nice handle on how you are doing it uniquely, how you see things. Okay, the UQ is different. It's not. Let me give you another example quickly of the gift profile. You know, when you have maybe a customized piece of furniture made, or a customized painting, or a customized piece of jewelry, or your children make you a customized painting. It's just for daddy, or whatever. Going from all levels, from the fancy stuff to the very simple stuff. That customized means it's unique for you. So the gift profile really helps you get an insight and a handle on how you are looking at life, how you're responding. What you do as you're in a relationship communicating, what are you doing as you're studying, as you're learning your information, in other words, as you go through your day. And having insight into that I found so valuable with my patients and also with myself and my kids and all my lab rats, as I've told you about, is when you get this insight, suddenly you see how to learn better. Very useful at school and university. You suddenly find that you are handling your relationships better because you're kind of watching yourself. You can feel, you learn to feel when you're stepping out of you're out of that customized way of thinking. So it gives you a good handle on understanding very practical stuff about how to manage the chronic and acute stresses. I'd honestly say the gift profile is a really strong tool for helping you learn to start the process of managing all those stressors. It goes way beyond mindfulness meditation, which is good, but it's not enough. Okay, so this gift profile tells you about your customized thinking. The UQ is organic, and it grows with life experiences. So whereas you can do the gift profile once, and if you want to do it again in 5 years' time, or whatever you're welcome to, and there's lots of explanation and whatever, but the UQ is something that you don't do in 20 minutes. You may spend the rest of your life doing it. We've got people that have got through one question in a month. That's fine. There's no rules. You just keep growing with it. You see how you change. I recommend to people when they do the UQ that you just get a little diary or some kind of a journal, or you can do it on your phone, whatever you prefer, or your computer. I don't really mind however you do it. But you start tracking how you're growing. And you don't have to do it all the time, but especially if you go through like an acute stress, or you suddenly reach a point where you realize, oh yeah, I'm living this kind of constant day-to-day craziness and I'm not managing it. It's a good time to start to take the UQ profile and start answering those questions, because you've got to really think about them. It's still based on the same basic science and philosophy, but it's the other side of the coin. So as you change, so your customized thinking doesn't change, but it grows. So you are you, but you just change over time. You're still you, but you keep changing over time. And the UQ helps you to track that. Both of these will teach you to become more self-regulated. Self-regulated, as I said already, is where you are able to literally stand back and observe your own thinking. Neuroscientifically, we see from neuroscience, quantum physics, psychoneuroimmunology, various different fields, we see that we are designed is the wrong word, we are structured to be able to do this self-regulation. In fact, we need to. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say, I'll give you an example from my own life. Yesterday, I was preparing my 300 slides for you. I've been preparing them for a few days. I do extensive research, 2 hours every day, sometimes more. No matter what comes, hell or high water, I do that. I have lots of stuff in my head. I could talk to you for 24 hours without stopping. My kids know that. They've learned how to switch off. So I have to be very disciplined. That's why I have Dominique's my producer. She's really teaching me how to be disciplined, like funnel all that knowledge into one thing. So yesterday I'm doing this, and I've created the slideshow, and I'm so excited about my slideshow, seriously. And I sit down with Dominique and I say, okay, and I start talking, and she says to me, no one's going to listen to you. Nothing like your own children telling you that, okay? If it was an employee, well, she's an employee, but not your child, she may not have been as direct. Anyway, long story short, she said, can you please summarize that into 30 slides? And I really had a stress attack. I said, there's no ways. Every word is important. I have to share. In other words, I got myself so worked up that I had to say, then Dominique actually wrote out a list of questions. She said, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to answer. And I sat looking at these questions, and I sat there for half an hour, and I got more and more anxious. And I was self-regulating. I could see it. I observed myself. I was getting, my cortisol was rising, my heart rate was rising, I was blocking, I couldn't think, I couldn't even read a word on the page. After 30 minutes, and Dominique was just watching this. After 30 minutes, I threw down, I didn't have my pen in my hand, I had a pen in my hand, and I had my computer. I threw it down, and I stomped upstairs. And I said, I can't do this, and I really had a little tantrum. And I felt so good, because I got it out. I had my tantrum. I was so frustrated. I wanted to tell you every detail, because every detail is important, but I can't tell you every detail. So I had to get to the point. So in other words, I was really challenged. I went up into my bedroom. I made a cocoon in my bedroom, literally. I turned off the lights. I was very tired because I hardly slept the night before, because I've been doing all these slides for you that I wasn't allowed to use in the end. Anyway, I just lay down for 20 minutes, and I had a thinker moment. And a thinker moment is something I talk about in my Think, Learn, Succeed book. And because I've done the gift profile and the UQ, and I live what I practice, what I preach, I don't just tell you the stuff, I live this stuff. And because I know how I think, feel, and choose, and because I had observed that my thinking, feeling, and choosing was going off whack in yesterday's preparation, and because I could feel the discomfort zones in my body rising up, I talk about the discomfort zones in my book, The Perfect You, where the UQ profile is. A discomfort zone is your body telling you, it's a physical and emotional warning signal, telling you that there's something wrong. I could feel it. I felt sick. My gut was in a knot. My heart was palpitating. I had all that, such a bad, but because I know that that's bad for me, because I know what to do, I could manage my mind. This is the point I'm making of the story, is that I went upstairs, I lay on the bed, I had a thinker moment where I just let my mind wander, and I daydreamed, and I calmed down, did some breathing, did a little bit of meditation, got a bit mindful, stood back and observed, gave myself a whole lecture after 10 minutes of that. Then I gave myself a lecture about, this is bad for you and all that stuff. And I went downstairs and I managed to finish the slideshow and reduce 300 down to however many slides that we've got now. It's about 35. Now that's a simple example, but it's a very real example, because I was going into acute stress, but I knew how to manage it. I had a mind management technique, and I also recognized that I had stepped out of my perfect you thinking. I had stepped out of the way that I think, feel, and choose. I couldn't think, feel, and choose properly. That's what will happen. So by understanding these, you can then track yourself, you can train yourself, you can self-regulate yourself, and the research shows that this is what you need to do. I've spent 30 years researching this. There's not many of us studying the mind. There's a lot of people studying the physical effects of the mind. There's not many people studying in-depth insight into how you manage your mind. Mind techniques are essential, and identity is where it begins. You have to understand you, but you're never going to understand you. That doesn't sound right, does it? You're going to start understanding how you think, feel, and choose, and then you're going to continue to learn to enjoy the journey of exploring how you manage things. I so enjoyed what happened yesterday, not at the time. I really did not. But I've so enjoyed the fact that I could learn from that experience. And I'm not sounding all cheesy, but I seriously was celebrating the fact I will be thankful for my regrets. I regret maybe getting irritated. I regret maybe snapping, because I did snap at my poor child. I can't do this. But I'm thankful for that, because I understand what it's done. But if I didn't understand how I could think, feel, and choose, I couldn't have done that. Are you getting this? I have to tell you how bad I am to help you. Okay, mind management is the third reason. If you don't shape you, the world will shape you. And that is destructive. Why do people like Kate Spade, or people in the prime of their life who seem to just have it together, commit suicide? They've got everything. They commit suicide because the world is shaping them. They don't feel valued for who they are. When you're satisfied with who you are driven to help others, you are humble, and you are fired up to keep learning from your mistakes. That is called a possibilities mindset. It's also in my book, Think, Learn, Succeed. If you were here last year, I spoke about the mindsets. I see a possibility in everything. That's what understanding my unique identity has taught me. I didn't used to. It used to be very hard for me to see all the different options, and get very stuck when something didn't quite go the way I wanted it to go. But understanding my thinking, feeling, and choosing has helped me to pick those up and shift where I need to. I don't want to be shaped by the world, because it's going to be a false shape. It's not going to have sustainability. I'm never going to be happy. You know that 25 years of experience in this field, and now thousands upon thousands of emails that we get, very often people's first statements are, this is who I am, but I can't seem to get it out. Or something, this is not, people do this, they take their hands and they do this. Something's wrong. You know what I'm saying? You've done this, you've said, this is how I see it. You're in an argument, you're frustrated, and you're trying to get your point across. And yes, there's a point where you need to also listen to the other person's point, but there is this thing inside of you, and it's called how you uniquely think, feel, and choose. And if you're in an argument and you're trying to say that, and you can see your partner's trying to say that, or the person you're fighting with or whatever, instead of you getting all mad and trying to get your point across, understanding your gift will stop you in your tracks. And yes, maybe they are wrong, and maybe you are right, and maybe they should listen to you. But you can stop in your tracks and say, okay, my thinking, feeling, choosing operates out of a love zone. I know when I'm thinking, feeling, choosing correctly, I'm going to tune into that person, no matter how ridiculously unreasonable they are. I'm not going to see that as the issue. I'm going to see that as the warning signal. There's something behind it. Why is that person being so frustrated or aggressive or difficult or angry or irritated or nasty to you or whatever, or not listening to you or not understanding you? You be the big one. You be the person who stands back and observes. But honestly, it won't happen until you understand how you think, feel, and choose, because it gives you another level of strength and resilience and inner something that helps you to see other people. When you're mad and you're frustrated or you're so caught up in your own issues, you can't see the wood for the trees. But when you understand your identity, it pulls you back. In the midst of that argument, in the midst of that block, there's a break, there's a crack, there's a pulling, there's a sense of happiness, there's a sense of success, there's a sense of something inside of you that you can draw on. And that's what I found that this profile did. That is why I am so hot on it, and that's why I do say that this is one of the first steps. Very quickly, the science, because we need to finish this session. Geez, I really can talk for hours. It's based on science. Everything I do is based on science, and science doesn't mean that it's gospel or God or that it's never going to change or that it's a pure fact. There is no such thing as a fact. Things change all the time. What we think is a fact today, next week's not going to be a fact, or next year or in 20 years is not going to be the same, because we keep learning. But what we can do, science is a striving, it's a progressive striving. So this particular profile I developed nearly 30 years ago, but I constantly change my understanding of it, okay? So everything I do is based in a scientific foundation that I am very aware is a moving target. So I've learned more. I wish now that in a way that I was still practicing, because I would do the profile differently now to how I did it 30 years ago. Anyway, so it's based in science. Those 7 bubbles that you see up there in the green part with the red arrow going through it, those 7 bubbles basically represent what we call metacognitive modules. Now, I'm going to make this very simple. We've all got a brain, and the brain, let me show you the next picture, it's going to make it easier to understand. And the brain has got a left and a right side, and it's got these different lobes, and so on, and it's got lots of structures inside, and it's very complicated, and we don't really understand it, but we sort of understand some of it. But what we do see is, and this particular drawing that I'm showing you, those colors represent a combination of different research in different fields that shows that as humans, our basic ability to think and feel and choose is broken up into different categories is the wrong word, what we call neurological pillars. So the simple way to understand this diagram and the science behind the profile, you'll see 7 different colors there. If I go back to the previous slide, you'll see 7 different bubbles. And it doesn't mean that it won't become 9 or 10 in a few years' time, but essentially, let me move this back to the right place. In the current status of research, we see that our brain has these 7 different neurological pillars that go all the way through the brain. It's not in the outside, it's the whole way through. And it groups from the areas of the brain that appear to respond when we do certain things. So the whole brain's involved in everything, and if you are, at the moment, like now, you're all thinking very deeply, your whole brain would be firing up, you'd have orange firing throughout, but because I'm speaking words and I'm showing you images, we're going to see like extra spurts of firing across the green area there, extra spurts of firing across the yellow part. This is a very simple explanation. We're going to see a lot of firing in the frontal lobe, the brown part, and so in other words, we're going to see the brain responding to your deep thinking. When you go to sleep, it'll have a different kind of response, etc. So the gift profile is basically how you use those 7 areas or neurological pillars. So everyone has all of this. We've all got these different areas of the brain, these different neurological pillars, not areas of the brain, sorry, and we all use all of them. And it's like digestion. When you digest food, it's got to go in your mouth and it goes down your throat, and you've got your intestine, your stomach, and your pancreas. You've got a whole process of digestion to get the nutrients. When you think, you're doing the same thing. When you think, feel, and choose, everything you think, feel, and choose about has to be digested. And you do that digestion uniquely, differently to the person sitting next to you. And that digestion process is like you've got your gallbladder and your pancreas and your intestines for digesting food, etc. Each of those different neurological pillars is playing a role in the digestion and building of your thought. So you think, feel, and choose uniquely to build a unique thought. And how it moves through your brain, etc., is basically what the science is showing. So I've got a lot more about it in the books, but essentially the profile is based on very solid science that I keep on updating and will help you to really get a handle on how you think, feel, and choose. Fantastic for kids. I initially developed it initially developed it for sort of teenagers and then developed for the younger and older generation. We'll talk about that as well tomorrow a little bit. Okay, so summary of this session. When you understand you won't be envious or jealous of anyone else, because you will see they enhance you. They don't actually threaten you. This is really key. Because if you are threatened by someone else, we know from the research, when you feel threatened, you will go into low-grade inflammation and you will manifest with behaviors. And if you feel constantly threatened, like a child who's growing up with an identity crisis, maybe it's a gender identity crisis or whatever it may be, or they just, for whatever reason, who knows, we're all so different, we can't categorize. But if you're constantly living with that, you're going to manifest that conflict of not being yourself in different behaviors. And it isn't a cookie cutter thing. It isn't you do this and then that'll happen. It's unique for each person. We have to keep on coming back to the case study narrative, not this biomedical cookie cutter model. Okay, so basically, what I'm trying to say there is that when your identity is not, when you don't feel you, and you don't feel valued for you, you're going to feel very threatened, and that threatened feeling is going to come out in various different ways, and it can make you very ill. It can cause all kinds of physical and mental and behavioral, cognitive schooling, you name it. So it's very important we address it. When I worked in schools, and I did a lot of work in schools, in this country, I've done some research and work in schools. The first 3 years I was here, I did a lot of work in charter schools. And the first thing I trained every single teacher that I worked with was to do these profiles and to do them in the classroom with the children. And the gift profile, which is quick to do, to actually print that out and put that around the classroom and celebrate the uniqueness. Because we're in a schooling system, and I talk about this extensively in Think, Learn, Succeed. The book Think, Learn, Succeed, is the current schooling system has been based on very, very bad science, that there's a bell curve and that this is what's good and normal, and anyone outside that, there's something wrong with them. And that has produced and resulted in a situation now where we're sitting with an overabundance of people labeled with ADHD, which is not even a disease. It is basically a categorical error or a descriptive name for a result of not recognizing the individuality in a person. But I'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow when we talk about with Dr. Mark, when we talk about children and so on, and give you some tips in the learning session. So coming back to you and your identity, I cannot stress enough that there's something you can do that no one else can do. Let me tell you this much. If you want to be a great mom or dad, or husband or wife, or sister, or aunt or uncle, or colleague or boss, you're not going to be good unless you understand who you are. You have to understand how you think, feel, and choose. And then you will also look at success differently. Success is not necessarily having the big fancy car, the greatest title, and lots of people working for you. You may be an awful success in that context. True success comes from, no matter what's on the outside, the inside, there's the sense of peace. And you know what I'm talking about, because those are the people that are starting to get a handle on the identity, those are the ones that we're drawn to. You're drawn to, and you sometimes, all of us, and I want to just clarify that, because all of us step in and out of our true identity. And some of us are in our identity a little bit more than others. But the moment you step into your identity, that's when people just start flocking to you. There's a sense of, there's just something. Sometimes they just maybe come and sit next to you. Maybe sometimes at work there's just something different about that moment when you're in that perfect state. So we're not always in it, because we don't always make the right choices, because we have free will. You're a thinking, feeling, choosing human being, and you are going to get crazy, irritated, and all those things. But by being mind-managed, you can deal with that and get back into your identity as soon as possible. And you can test, as I said, test when you're in your identity, because people are drawn to you. They're just drawn. It's like a magnet. Okay, we are going to stop. It is we've got to take a 30-minute session. Dominique's going to take over before I talk too much. So